The Valley Radio, creatively covering what matters to you.
Hello and welcome to The Movie Reel, the new show brought to you by the Valley Radio Online that reviews some of the best films currently playing in Bridgnorth and the surrounding areas. I'm your host, Johnny Boy, and with me is James Frizzell, the manager of the Majestic Cinema in Bridgnorth. And this week we'll be talking about Robert Downey Jr. returning in Iron Man 3, a remake of the seminal horror classic The Evil Dead, and Star Trek Into Darkness. Right, James, thanks for coming on the programme. First off, Iron Man 3. Robert Downey Jr. is back as Tony Stark. What did you think?
I thought it was very good. It was better than the other two films I would have thought. There was a bit more action in it at the end. I mean, this one was directed by Shane Black, who, funnily enough, wrote Lethal Weapon film, and his last film was Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which was very good.
Yes, it's a very highly regarded film.
Also, of course, we've got Robert Downey Jr. again as Tony Stark. Gwyneth Paltrow's back in it as Pepper Potts. We have Don Cheadle in it and Guy Pearce, and an outstanding performance from the great Ben Kingsley, as always. I think he stole the whole film for sure as the Mandarin.
And does it follow off directly from the Avengers, or does it sort of start off on a new chapter?
Yeah, it kind of, you have to have seen the Avengers to kind of get half the film, I would have thought. You could just go and watch it if you hadn't seen the others, but a lot of it does reference to Tony's time in New York and how he hasn't quite recovered from the Avengers at the end. And he's not his usual self, he's pretty at a low ebb in his life. And it starts off kind of slow, as in, you know, he doesn't know where he's at if he doesn't want to carry on with the suit and become Iron Man anymore. But all that does change, obviously, when he confronts the Mandarin and tells him to come and get him. And without giving too much away, that's when the action begins, about 30 minutes in.
Now, Shane Black is the director, but the previous two were directed by Jon Favreau, who also plays the part of Happy Hogan in the previous two films. Is his directing style any different to John's, or is it sort of a natural continuation?
I think it's a bit more fast-paced, this, but as with the other Iron Man films, they were pretty slow, but there was a brilliant story in it, and when stuff did happen, it happens really good.
So all the regulars from the first film are back. We've got Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, Don Cheadle as Colonel James Rhodes, Rhodey, War Machine, or whatever he was in the previous one.
Yeah, he's been rebranded. He was War Machine, but they've rebranded him as the Iron Patriot in the American colours, comes flying in to save the world sort of thing. But he plays a really good, like, I'll say sidekick's the wrong word, but he does help Tony out a lot, and there's a lot more suits in this one. I mean, he's got about 20 suits, and they're all different. He has adapted his technology a lot more. Stark Tower, he's been working on the suits for a long time, but he seems a lot more subdued. Robert Downey Jr.'s performance in this wasn't as good as the Avengers, I wouldn't have thought. Where I thought in that he acted everybody in the film in Avengers, apart from Loki, of course. He played a brilliant part as a baddie. But that's going back to Avengers. With this, Tony seems more subdued. Ben Kingsley steals the whole film. It's worth watching just to see Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin.
And, of course, Pepper Potts, played by Gwyneth Paltrow. Does the love story, the romantic angle between the two of them, is that sort of brought to a conclusion, or
it's in there? There are a couple. I think he kind of saves the skin once or twice in it, you know, and she does get a lot more involved in this one, I think, than the other films. She's more than just his PA in this one, I think. But she does play an outstanding role, very underrated actress, very good at what she does.
And of course we've got Guy Pearce as well. What part does he play?
He plays someone that Tony met in New Year's Eve '99 in Switzerland. And he turned him down for some biological equation that he had to regenerate cells and stuff. And it's now set in the present day. And he comes back asking for a business deal with Pepper Potts to help fund his programme. And I don't really want to give too much away about that because it'll ruin the film for everybody. But he plays a really big part in that, Guy Pearce.
And, of course, you saw it in 3D, didn't you? What are the 3D effects like in
Well, I've seen quite a lot of films in 3D because obviously I run a cinema and I get a chance to watch everything. The 3D wasn't outstanding. It was good. Nothing really jumps out at you. I think the best 3D yet this year was obviously the Wizard of Oz remake. That was stunning. I mean, compared to that, the 3D wasn't all that good. But, I mean, it's good. The depth of field's good. Visually, it's fantastic. And some of the action scenes, of course, brilliant in 3D, but not the best. With Avatar being the benchmark, Oz second, I'd rate Iron Man probably 10th.
Oh, right, okay. Well, that's
just visual effects-wise, though, in 3D.
Yeah. So, as a worthy successor to the previous two, then, do you think?
Definitely, yes. Definitely. In fact, I enjoyed the second one with Mickey Rourke in it. That was brilliant. But this one, I think, it's more in depth. You do have had to have seen the Avengers, I think, personally, to understand what's going on in the Marvel Universe as a whole. And of course, there's this little part from Stan Lee. You always get Stan Lee in all the Marvel films, which is really good, and everyone like claps when they see him. And also, there's a surprise bit from the Hulk, but I'm not going to ruin anything more.
Okay, well, thanks for that, James. Right, now, Evil Dead. The original Video Nasty has been remade. This film, for a lot of people, was sort of their first introduction into what was called body horror. But it is generally regarded now by a lot of people as a classic. What's the new one like?
Right, well, I am a big fan of the original, and I was dubious. You get all these remakes and these reboots of franchises, and I thought, you know what, I'm looking forward to it. I prefer to have seen Evil Dead 4 with the great Bruce Campbell in it. That is possibly in the making at the moment, we don't know. There's rumour of it. But, I watched it thinking, you know, I can't wait. I am looking forward to it. I was not let down one bit at all. I mean, we are talking the best horror film in the last decade, or even since the original. I can't think of a film with more blood, guts, suspense, and just pure shock horror than anything else I've seen in a very long time. Saw films, they're just some twisted gore for gore's sake. They're not all that for me, but this is on a different level. They've changed some of the things. It's lost a bit of the comedy element that you get from the original ones. The 5 people go out to the woods. It's great to see the car there. The car's in it from the original. It's a rusty old thing, but it's there. It's at the same house. It looks like they've shot it in exactly the same location. Although it does say they shot some of it in New Zealand, which I was surprised at. But I mean, it won't let the original fans down. I thought it was just a complete and utter shock horror roller coaster ride. Takes a while to get going, as the original, like I say, 5 kids go out to the woods. This time it's about to get this girl to go cold turkey off heroin, and she goes there and they don't want to let her out of the house because, you know, she's got to get off heroin, so they want to keep her there. But then obviously they go down into the dreaded cellar under the trapdoor, and they find all these cats hanging up and all these bodies, and they think, well, what's all this about? And then of course they find the Book of the Dead. And then for some reason, one of the lads doesn't tell anybody else, decides to recite the passages from the Necronomicon. And you guess what happens, folks? It's bad. I mean, okay, you did get the original was banned for 10 years because there was a scene in it with a tree rape. That was really horrific in the original. They have added that scene to this film, but it's not half as graphic as the original. They've toned it down a bit, but then they've made up for that with the amount of blood that comes pouring out the screen. I think everybody loses a limb of sorts. It is a genuine horror film that horror films should be. There's not many like that. There hasn't been one since the original, and this one won't let the fans down. And it is not gore for gore's sake. It's pure, utter, unadulterated, edge of your seat. Can you look at it? You have to look away, but you can't. Horror film. Most
of the modern horror films these days have a tendency of the sort of gritty realism. Whereas you did have this, it's only a movie feeling about the classic Evil Dead and the like. Are we in that sort of territory? Does it doff its cap to the original, or is it sort of trying to stand out as something on its own 2 feet?
I think it stands out on its own as a horror film, as like not even a remake, but someone else's vision of the Evil Dead. But there's so much homage to the original in there. You know, there's all sorts. And Bruce Campbell, of course, he produced this, the great Ash. You know, for those who love the original, all I say is just wait till after the end credits. It's worth it just for that 5 seconds to see Ash in it.
The director?
He was Fede Alvarez, if I pronounced that right. I hope I have. But it's definitely his vision of a classic horror film. I mean, the original, you had plasticine monsters, and you watch it now, and it does look old hat. It's not as scary as when it came out in 1981, where it literally terrified moviegoers across the world. There was nothing like it before. This one, there's no green blood, it's all red, and lots of it. Of course, you get the chainsaw, you get the shotgun, but there's also some horrific scenes that are just unbearable to watch with the same context of the original. The playing card scene's not in there, which I was a bit ashamed about. I like that from the original, where she recites all the playing cards. But once it gets going, this film, I think, is a lot more scarier than Sam Raimi's original. But they have used Sam Raimi's vision, and I think he was executive producer on this. And they've turned it into something that is just unwatchably watchable, if you know what I mean.
Right, groovy. Now it's competition time. We've got some very special limited edition prizes direct from Marvel Studios themselves. Why don't you tell us what we've got?
We have, yes. I've managed to convince Disney and Marvel to send me, I've got an Iron Man lanyard and a keyring whistle straight from Marvel, can't be bought in any shops. And I'm also going to give 2 free tickets away and a poster, the cinema poster of Iron Man 3.
That's fantastic. And what's the question?
Which Marvel superhero film did the original car from Evil Dead appear in?
So, just to repeat the question again, that is the famous car from the original Evil Dead. Which Marvel superhero film did that car feature in? So, if you think you know the right answer, head over to the Valley Radio Facebook page and post your answer there. James will pick out the correct answer at random, and if you want more details on the competition, please head over to our website, www.thevalleyradio.org. That's www.thevalleyradio.org. Okay, and finally, James, the new J.J. Abraham film, Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yes, very good film. Much better than the last one that they did, I thought, in my own personal opinion. Again, I watched this in 3D, which I think the effects were actually better than Iron Man in Star Trek. They really did work well with the depth of field, and you could look right into space. Very good film. Obviously, J.J. Abrams, who did Super 8, and hopefully he's going to do Star Wars justice. We'll have to wait and see about that. But I think he's probably the best man for the job at the moment, after doing this film. Okay, in this we've got Chris Pine as Captain Kirk again. He was also in Unstoppable. We have Zachary Quinto back as Spock from Heroes. We have the amazing Benedict Cumberbatch as John Harrison, who plays the baddie in this film. It's a very good performance from him. Zoe Salandra from Avatar playing Uhura. We have Carl Urban as Bones, who played Judge Dredd, and of course Simon Pegg again as Scotty, which is quite a comical character he plays. And of course Peter Robocop Weller as Admiral Marcus, and Alice Eve as Carol Marcus. And of course there's an appearance from the great British filmmaker Noel Clarke at the beginning.
Noel Clarke, the patron saint of British cinema at the moment. Now, it was a bit of a Marmite film, the 2009 Star Trek. I think it was aimed at non-Star Trek fans more than it was for the original Trekkies like me. I think it was described by one critic as Dawson's Trek. Is this more Star Trek that people have been wanting, or is it still carrying on in its own trajectory, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek universe?
I think this one personally is a good one for the Trekkie fans as well. There's a lot of homage to the other ones in there. I'm not going to give too much away, but there's a homage to the Klingons are in there. They go to the home planet of Kronos for a scene, and you see the Klingon warbirds are in it. So yeah, that's pretty good. They look a lot more intimidating than the old plastic ones that you used to get when they used to look all covered in makeup. These guys look pretty intimidating, and you wouldn't want to upset one in a bar, put it that way. The fans that didn't like the last one, I think, will enjoy this one a lot more, because it does bring back full circle some of the things from the other films that we've seen. But I think it's very good, and I think some of the action sequences are fantastic in this one. I think they've used the technology to the best they can. From the word go, there's a great opening sequence. So they're on another planet, the planet Nibiru, I think, which is quite a good opening sequence. And they've come to see like an alien race who don't need to know anything about technology. They haven't even invented the wheel yet. And of course, the great Starship Enterprise rises from the sea, and that's quite an epic opening sequence.
All right, the Starship Enterprise rises from the sea. That's a new one.
We have the great Benedict Cumberbatch from the Sherlock Holmes series, Warhorse, and I think he's actually voicing Smaug the Dragon in the new Hobbit film. Again, steals the film. Best actor in it by a long way. Plays a very good villain. Even his voice is really intimidating in it. And yes, I'm not going to give too much away, but yes, he plays a perfect Star Trek villain that the fans will really enjoy.
Okay. So, yeah, much better than the first one, or on par?
Better. I think better. Some of my customers saw it the other day at the cinema. They said they preferred the original, but I tend to disagree with that. I think this is more fast-paced. The first one was more like building the characters up again from scratch, how they all met and how they all started. This one, they've all bonded together already from the last film, and I think it's more of a proper science fiction action film. There's a lot of action in there. Of course, we've got Spock again and Kirk, and in the last film they didn't like each other, but in this film they grow as the friendships that you see in the earlier Star Trek films.
It's nice to see the bromance is developing there.
And of course I've seen it in 3D again. I would say this is probably one of the films where it'd be better to watch it in 3D than 2D. Some of them, you know, you watch it in 2D, it's the same old, but this, the 3D, definitely did it for me in this one. Got a bit of a criticism with the flares in the films that he's using, with the cameras that he's using all the time. It keeps interrupting the vision of the film, I think.
He does like his anamorphic lenses, does JJ?
He does, and I think he overuses them quite a lot in this, but it doesn't take away anything. That's just for the trained eye.
I think it's more pronounced in 3D than it is in usual good old-fashioned 2D. Okay, well, thanks for that review, James. So we've had Robert Downey Jr. returning possibly for the last time in Iron Man 3. We've had a very good review of The Evil Dead, and J.J. Abrams' Star Trek Into Darkness. Which was your favourite out of the three?
Well, that's a very difficult question, to be fair, because they're three different films, really. I think as a film, I enjoyed Star Trek. That was probably the best one visually. But for the sheer roller coaster ride and the feeling when I came out the cinema, it has to be Evil Dead. It just has to be, because I was just on the edge of my seat for an hour and a half, and I was thinking about it all night afterwards and trying to recover from it, basically. So, yeah, that would be my film that I like best personally. But I'd say Star Trek is probably one of the best films of the year yet. It has to be, yeah, it has to be Star Trek.
Right, James, thanks a lot for that. And that's the end, I'm afraid, of this edition of The Movie Reel. I want to thank again James Frizzell. I also want to thank our researchers, Paul Tacky and James Farina. Don't forget our competition. Which Marvel superhero film had a guest star appearance from the car that featured in the original Evil Dead film? Don't forget to head over to our website, www.thevalleyradio.org, and we'll see you next time. And thanks for listening.
The Valley Radio, the future of online broadcasting.
Benedict Cumberbatch. I've said patch.
Batch, yeah.
If I say it with me, Benedict Cumberbatch. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch.